So in that video about the writing tips, there was a point about how LGBT metaphors are inherently inferior to just writing LGBT characters, and while I see where the point comes from, I disagree with it on several bases, one of which being that sometimes metaphors just happen by accident. And I was gonna talk about that a little, but there was no concise way to do it. So I'm making a separate video that's kind of a concomitant companion to that one, but really it's just a mini essay in its own right. So the Fate franchise is all about spellcasters summoning heroic spirits as servants to fight battles. You have historical figures like Alexander the Great, Jeanne d'Arc, Thomas Edison. And you have mythological figures like King Arthur but a lesbian, Medusa but a dominatrix, and Siegfried but with no personality. But the most interesting ones from an epistemic perspective are those who fill the space between. Folkloric figures who, because of their status as folklore, are not entirely fact or fiction. Gilles de Rais as syncretized with the folktale Bluebeard, Hassani Sabah, the Old Man of the Mountain, Jack the Ripper. The reason these folkloric spirits are so interesting is that they implicitly challenge the authenticity of every spirit. What do I mean by that? Well, you have spirits coming from the matter of Britain and Greek mythology and Irish legends and the literary canon. Hey, non-Fate fans, guess who this character is? Fucking guess. And this setting, despite being modern fantasy, doesn't seem able to accommodate all of those mythologies just being real. And then you look at the historical figures and you see how their depiction contradicts most facts. But well, the series isn't earnestly claiming that Alexander the Great was 10 feet tall, it's a stylized representation. But the folkloric spirits just slam dunk a spanner right in there. Fate Stay Night has Sasaki Kojiro, a legendary Japanese swordsman and rival of the samurai Musashi, who is speculated to have been a real person, but is at the very least exaggerated in retellings. In Stay Night, Kojiro is summoned under complex circumstances as the servant of another servant, and he acts as the gatekeeper for a specific location and becomes something of a rival to lesbian Arthur. And then it turns out he's not actually Kojiro. He speculates that maybe there was no Kojiro, maybe there was one who cannot live up to the legend. Either way, the summoning ritual summoned some other swordsman from the past who has the parameters commonly attributed to Sasaki Kojiro and called it a day. As such, he kind of despairs his perceived lack of identity. And it's things like this that call the entire heroic spirit system into question. If Kojiro isn't Kojiro, is anyone who they think they are? Do any of these summoned spirits have anything akin to actual histories? Is that the real reincarnation of Cuchulainn, suggesting that he just existed in the history of Ireland in this setting? Or is the ritual just creating a guy, slapping the traits of Cuchulainn onto him, giving him memories that correspond to the legend, and calling it a day? In one timeline, after girl boss Arthur dematerializes, she's shown at the moment of her death, waking from what she assumes to be a dream of the events of Fate Stay Night. Again, it's very effectively ambiguous. Was she really summoned from the past? Or does this Arturia Pendragon exist somewhere in time and space separately from the summoned one, but still having some metaphysical connection to her? Or is this entire sequence just metaphorical? There's an ambiguity there that makes the setting more interesting. It's also suggested that the forms of the summoned historical figures are influenced by not only how they perceive themselves, but how they have gone down in history. So once again, the Jeanne d'Arc here is not necessarily a real reincarnation of the Jeanne d'Arc from history, so much as an incarnation of what humanity understands Jeanne d'Arc to be. The combination of the mythological, the historical, the literary, and the folkloric suggests that these spirits are being drawn not from a quantifiable, measurable pool of people who objectively exist, but rather from a collective consciousness, a pool of figures that the general public are aware of. And later entries in the franchise have kind of gone in the direction of making it clear that the spirits are summoned from quantifiable and measurable locations in space-time, and that kind of disappoints me because I understand why the lore is being built on like this. There often is a desire to constantly develop your setting and remove ambiguity, and that's actually another thing that came up in the writing tips video, but it takes away the potency of that ambiguity. There is an implicit melancholy in the meaninglessness of being summoned. Some power-hungry wizard wanted the goddamn Holy Grail, so now you've been summoned and you have the name and the face and maybe the memories of some figure, factual or fictional, but you don't know for certain that that's you? Are you someone that's been dead for centuries, forced back to life to fight someone else's battles for a few days? Are you some other person's ghost squeezed into the role of someone who never really existed? Or are you just a shell created and programmed specifically for this role to be discarded when no longer needed? The entire notion of being summoned with very little chance that you'll be around for more than like a couple weeks tops feels like a concentrated microcosm of the fear of death in general, and combine that with this flimsy identity being forced on you, the fact that you've just been created and told, this is what you are, this is the role you're gonna play. Isn't that brutal? Do you have time to figure out what you want for yourself? Do you have time to resist what's been imposed on you? You're only here for a moment, and if anyone knows who you are, what you are, then they know everything you're supposed to be. They know your weaknesses, they know how to fight you, they know every habit and quality of the role you're supposed to fulfill, every belief and desire you're supposed to have. The easiest route is that as a servant, you're supposed to just accept what you are, be the identity that's been decided for you, fulfill the duties associated with that identity, regardless of pain or personal crisis. You are a thing brought into the world and told that you have no self-definition, forced into an existence that is a performance of something that may or may not have ever been real in the first place, an existence that wears the name of a phantom that is subservient to that phantom. It's a mimicry based on a nebulous Enchiridion conjured from the cultural consciousness as the constitution of an incorporeal concept. A pantomime of an existence defined by mimicry, but where the thing you're mimicking is just an idea, a continuously perpetuated idea, an idea that everyone believes, but just an idea. It's a disguise based on other disguises with no real thing to be based on. Gender.